So are the new chunky heavy intercessors better than the regular sized ones? Time to run some numbers and look at the differences between intercessors and heavy intercessors. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. In today's video we're going to compare their Gravis armoured heavy intercessors to the standard size variant. We'll look at the numbers for their durability, their damage output both at range and in melee, and then a few other factors on top of that as to why you might pick one over the other. Plenty to look into here, so let's do a bit of comparison. First of all, let's see how well they hold up to enemy fire. At present, intercessors are 20 points and heavy intercessors are 28, so for 140 points we can get a unit of 7 regular intercessors versus a unit of 5 heavy intercessors. For the most part, it's a pretty clean sweep durability-wise, for the heavy intercessors being tougher across the board. Against lasguns, it's fairly close. They'll take 135 shots before they go down, over the regular intercessors 126, so not so different. But against strength 4 and strength 5 weapons, the heavy intercessors massively win, and are almost twice as durable against heavy bolter fire, which is one of the best ways to kill standard intercessors. The flat 2 damage is far more efficient against them than it is against the heavies. The same is true of the autocannon and overcharged plasma. Basically anything with flat 2 damage is going to be far more efficient against standard intercessors. They don't have it literally all their own way. Grenade launchers are very slightly more efficient against heavy intercessors than standard ones, because the random D3 damage does a lot better against them. And the same is true of thunderhammers, the flat 3 damage punching through Gravis armour pretty well. Neither of these are all that much of a difference though. That toughness does come into effect on the thunderhammer comparison. Interestingly, the increased toughness even makes the heavy intercessors slightly better against taking lascannon fire. Although it is very close between the two, they're both pretty much equally resistant to taking anti-tank weapons. Overall though, for taking enemy fire, it's fairly even across the majority of the board, but with anything strength 4, strength 5 or flat 2 damage, the heavy intercessors win out in a very big way. Now let's talk bolter fire, and we'll take a look at their ranged damage output. I know you can take the heavy bolter for the heavy intercessors, and you can use the rapid fire stratagem on the standard variants, but here we just have the base numbers for your standard guys, the amount of wounds they put on various different targets, with no combat doctrines being used. For those that aren't familiar with the standard bolt rifles, the heavy intercessors have slightly upgraded versions of the regular intercessor guns. They all have 6-inch extra range, and they're all strength 5 rather than strength 4. Other than that, there aren't any other changes. When you work it out point for point, for the amount of wounds that each squad will put out, they're actually surprisingly similar on most areas, and it largely depends on the toughness of the foe that you're firing at. Regular intercessors win against guardsmen and toughness 3 targets, and their damage output is almost exactly equal on toughness 4 and toughness 5. The heavy intercessors win out very slightly when they're targeting toughness 5 units, such as this aggressor. Against toughness 6 and 7, the standard intercessors win, and against toughness 8 targets, the heavy version wins. Overall though, I will put this at a small win for the standard intercessor squad, as provided they're in range, they're at least slightly better at targeting everything that isn't toughness 5 or toughness 8. Next we get on to melee damage, which is quite easy to calculate, as they're all going to be punching with strength 4 attacks. Our squad of 7 intercessors with shock assault will have 23 strength 4 attacks, as the sergeant can take an Astartes chainsword for free. That Astartes chainsword just by itself is really quite a nice upgrade as well, as it's AP-1 for his whopping 5 attacks. It should average you killing around about 7 dead orcs, and of course you do have the option to augment the squad with Thunderhammer or Power Fist to really allow it to punch against heavy targets as well. To be honest, there's not a lot of contest compared with the heavy intercessors. You get 16 strength 4 attacks with no AP whatsoever, so you average about 4 or 5 dead orcs. Regular intercessors most definitely win the melee damage contest. So of course there are a fair few other considerations when taking the two units. Let's go through some of the advantages of each. The standard intercessors, as we've said, have better melee and slightly better damage output at range. They also have an additional pip of movement, which can be helpful for getting them where they need to go. And if they are advancing towards the enemy, then the option of taking a Power Fist or Thunderhammer in the squad is actually a really good one. It means that your opponent can't afford to charge them with enemy units unless they want to take some hefty damage, even if there's some heavy targets that are locking them up. The carnage that even a lone intercessor sergeant in the assault doctrine in the late game can do is really quite potent. It's almost like a mini character. You do also have the option for the Astartes grenade launcher, though it isn't very well costed at the moment to be honest, and I personally wouldn't take it. One other slight advantage of the regular intercessors is that they're a smaller points investment than the heavy version if you really just want to fill a troop slot or have a troop slot sat on your backfield objectives. Even if they are a little bit less durable per point than the heavy intercessors, the fact that you could secure the objective with 100 points worth of models rather than 140 means that you could be paying quite a bit less for the privilege of having a squad lock down one of your flanks. If you really want to economise on troops, then it will allow you to field more big, exciting, punchy stuff as well. You could get a whole nother Terminator or something for the price of including heavy intercessors over standard ones. Finally, standard intercessors have access to an excellent damage dealing stratagem in rapid fire. This is a nice uncomplicated one, 2 command points to allow your squad to fire twice. It's not bad on 5-man units, 2 command points for an extra 10 bolter shots when you desperately need them could be really handy, though of course it's most potent on a really big unit. Say you had a squad of 10 of them with the auto bolt rifles, you could pay 2 command points and get an extra 30 shots down range, really quite an efficient way of melting hordes. In terms of advantages for the heavy intercessors, generally I think they have better durability, and massively more so against flat damage 2 weapons. In 9th edition, where doggedly hoarding objectives is great, this is a really good asset. We did mention it before, but that 6-inch longer range is really quite good. It means that you can often sit them back in your deployment zone on objectives a bit more and be pretty guaranteed that they're going to be contributing to the game, shooting down the things that you need them to. It also is pretty handy on the assault version of their gun. Going from 24 inches to 30-inch range will give you lots more targets. Next, they do have the options of their 3 types of heavy bolter, which you can pick up over their heavy bolt rifle for 10 points more. If the squad's camping on an objective, then I'd say that this is a pretty reasonable buy-in, as they're not likely to die, and you're probably going to get multiple turns of shooting with it. I'm not sure I'm quite as big a fan of the assault version of the heavy bolter, the Hellstorm one myself. If I was using the Hellstorm bolt rifles, then I'd probably leave that one at home. I think that heavy intercessors have very slightly better synergy with the apothecary. Of course, both squads love to have a 6+ feel no pain on the go, but with 3 wounds these guys will make a bit better use of its healing abilities. And also if you use the combat restorative stratagem for 1 command point, then you get to set up an entire 3-wound model rather than a 2-wound one. If you do have a couple of squads of these guys advancing alongside an apothecary, then they might feel the benefits just a little bit more. Finally, for their unique stratagem that the other intercessors can't use, there's one that allows you to get +1 save against damage 1 weapons that your opponent fires at you. It's quite a nice little durability buff, and it further serves to allow them to be almost semi-invincible to small arms fire. Could be good if you're being hosed with things like assault cannons or onslaught gatling cannons, which do have some fairly decent efficiency against heavy intercessors. So to sum up, I just thought we'd talk a bit about different options for battlefield roles for the 2 units. Firstly, as objective campers, I think that point for point the heavy intercessors are better for the role. They have longer range and are tougher, which are the main characteristics that you want. However, you are paying a premium for this price. If a squad of 5 intercessors might have done the job just as well, then you might well be throwing points down the drain by spending the extra 40 or 50 to upgrade them to heavy units, as you might have entire games where the opponent isn't even shooting at them and might be focusing on the rest of your army in the midfield. In terms of an advancing gun line of intercessors moving forward to take midfield objectives, I feel like both of them could have a decent role, though I suspect that regular intercessors might be the better pick. The main reason is being able to take a power fist or thunderhammer, which means that they're a melee threat as well as a ranged one, which is more important than ever in 9th. They're a bit faster for actually getting there with better movement, and having more numbers point for point might be better for taking objectives. Don't get me wrong, I think that heavy intercessors could be almost equally strong for the role, but if you have them wandering up, then I think you're going to want to support them with other melee threats, whether that's fighty characters or other units with decent melee profiles like dreadnoughts. If you're thinking about using strategic reserves or other stratagems to deep strike or outflank them, I feel that you're probably better with regular intercessors again, as it could be quite a good way of delivering a full 10-man squad and getting maximal value out of that rapid fire stratagem before then charging in and trying to make use of their melee. The only issue with this is that you might want to use other units for the same role, say things like aggressors or terminators, which generally point for point will do more damage. Being able to access transports is another advantage for regular intercessors. I don't think the repulsors are worth buying in to transport heavy intercessors around in any way, shape or form, but an impulsor rush with a whole load of Primaris bodies inside could be something for the standard intercessors, though again you might be better off with units such as the assault intercessors, veteran intercessors or blade guard. Finally though, just as an army-wide consideration, while they might not necessarily compare amazingly for the different battlefield roles with standard intercessors, you can get a bit of entire army-wide durability to completely frustrate your opponent's anti-infantry fire. There's plenty of strength 4 and 5 guns that would generally be very good against toughness 4 space marines, and having heavy intercessors in the troops choice means that you don't have to expose any of those targets to your opponent's fire. You can now literally field entire armies of space marines with toughness 5 and 3 wounds, and completely oversaturate your opponent's capacity to deal with them. Heavy intercessors are likely going to survive to do whatever they want. If you've got a whole load of other toughness 5 units rushing towards the enemy, maybe things like eradicators, inceptors, aggressors, invader ATVs, you really can field a lot of efficient units with the same defensive profile. Honestly, I think that this more than anything else could be one of the main reasons to include heavy intercessors in your army, and it could be an absolute nightmare for your opponent to try and deal efficient damage to them. So overall, I would say that there's most certainly roles for both of them. In a lot of categories they're really quite balanced. Perhaps the heavy intercessors have the better stats for being a gunline unit, though to be so, they do give up trade-offs in terms of melee damage power, maneuverability, and maybe slightly better damage dealing against hordes. Let me know what you think of the two units as to which is stronger down in the comments below, or if I've managed to miss anything important when comparing the two units. If you've enjoyed the comparison, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. We'll certainly be keeping going with Space Marine Tactics videos and comparison ones as we continue our look at the new codex. If you've been enjoying all the videos and you'd like to help support the channel, there's a link to my channel's Patreon page down in the video description below. Making all of these videos does take a fair amount of time, so if you're enjoying regularly, then any support is massively appreciated. Channel patrons get to see a video early each week, there's regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and you also get automatic entry into the channel's monthly prize draw with a chance to win some really big model kits. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help keep these videos coming, then the link is down in the video description below. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.